Hey everyone, today I thought I'd do a quick sort of video on the F3 debug shortcuts. And I know a lot of you will probably know most of these already, but I was watching a live stream by Seth Bling recently and he didn't seem to know about the frame time graph. So I thought I'd do just a quick video sort of showing off all the debug shortcuts and how to use them and what they're for. Because it's just good sort of general knowledge for not just map makers or anything like that, but just in general everyone. So you probably know that pressing F3 will bring up the debug screen. If you're on a Mac, or I think some computers, you may need to press Fn and F3, so just bear that in mind. But on the debug screen it shows lots of sort of helpful information such as the frames per second and the coordinates. I'll leave a link in the description to a good Minecraft wiki page which sort of explains what everything on the debug screen actually means. But you can actually press F3 in conjunction with other keys to perform certain sort of debugging actions. So we're going to try and do them in a sort of alphabetical order. So the first one is F3 and A, and this will reload all the chunks. So you might be able to see very quickly all the chunks around me sort of flash and reload. And I generally don't have to use this much unless I'm sort of encountering visual bugs or something like that, or a part of my world remains loaded when it shouldn't be, stuff like that. You don't use it very often. And the next thing is F3 and B, and this will show entity hitboxes. So you just press them together and you can see the hitbox around all entities. So the white sort of lines around them denote the hitbox, and the blue line is the sort of rotation or direction that they're facing. So this works with all entities, including things like item entities as well, showing their rotation even if it's not sort of necessary data. So let's turn that off. And the next thing is F3 and C. And you've got to hold these down for 10 seconds, and then when you let go it'll perform a debugging crash. So this will print out a crash report when you let go, and Minecraft will completely close down and Although manually triggering a debug crash might not seem like the most useful thing in the world, it can often be useful if you're trying to help someone out, if they've got like a problem with their Minecraft or their Minecraft isn't running that well. It can be easier to just get them to perform a debug crash, which prints out their sort of system information like their Java version and all that, rather than having them sort of try and figure out themselves. So yeah, you probably won't have to use it a lot, if at all, but it's there if you need it. So next up we have F3 and D, and I probably use this one the most. It just clears chat, simple as that. So if you try and, for example, you have a long entity data command or something like this, and it clogs up your chat, you just want to get rid of it, just press F3 and D and it will clear your chat. Bear in mind though that if you do a command, let's just say test, and then you clear, you can usually press the up arrow to get the last command that you performed, so you can do it again. But if you clear chat and then try and use the up arrow, it won't be there, so just bear that in mind. So next up is F3 and H. So usually in this sort of inventory, when hovering over an item, you'll only see things like the name and if there's any lore assigned to that item. Or if on a tool, for example, there's things like attack speed and attack damage attributes. But you won't be able to see things like the ID number or the actual name of the sort of Minecraft assigned name of the item. But if we press F3 and H and we open the inventory again, you'll see that all the items now have an ID assigned to them. So for example, iron ore is number 15, and it shows the Minecraft name, so iron_ore. On things like tools, if they have a durability, the durability will be shown on the item as well as things like the name and ID. So next up we have F3 and P, which toggles the sort of pause functionality of Minecraft. So if, for example, I press Alt and Tab at the same time to change which program Windows is focused on, say I open Skype or something like that, and then come back into Minecraft, you can see that it's actually paused now. So this is useful for survival players. Just stops you from getting attacked while you're not focused on Minecraft. But if you're more of a creative player and you maybe like to record quick GIFs or quick screenshots, things like that, using a program like Gyazo or any sort of program that quickly uploads a screenshot or GIF to the internet, you may want to turn this off. So for example, if I press F3 and P and then I Alt-Tab, I'm currently on Google Chrome, but if I go back to Minecraft, you can see it hasn't paused or anything like that. So I can quickly, for example, just go and record, click the record button on my software, and then go back to Minecraft and it'll start recording. So this next shortcut is useful for resource pack makers, and it is F3 and T, and it allows you to reload all the textures. And I guess I should specify more that it's reload the entire resource pack rather than just the textures. But as you may know, the 1.9 update has sort of messed up all the sort of model sizes and things like that. So if I just throw this master sword out there from the adventure map that we're making, you can see it's entirely huge. So say for example I go into my resource packs folder and open up the master sword, go into assets, Minecraft, models, item, and then I find diamond sword. I'm going to quickly just adjust the scale of the model down here. So we've got display, I believe it's ground. So let's just change this to, I don't know, let's just put it all as 1 for now. And we'll see how that looks. And I believe we might have to change this as well. We'll see how this looks. Usually I do this in cubic, so I don't have to worry about all of this. But if I press F3 and T now, it'll take a moment to reload all the textures. It'll depend on the sort of size of the resource pack, how long it takes. Yeah, so that's a more sort of reasonable size, but from there I can keep going back to sort of Notepad or the texture editing program, whatever you want, and just sort of keep editing, saving, and just reloading the textures until I get what I want. So next up we have F3 and N, and this was introduced in the 1.9 snapshots, and it allows any opt player, or if you're in single player and have cheats enabled, it allows you to toggle between spectator mode and creative mode. So right now I'm in creative mode, but if I press F3 and N, it'll quickly switch me over to spectator mode rather, without actually having to enter any commands. And from here you can actually use the scroll wheel to sort of speed up or slow down the movement speed while you're in spectator mode, which is something that not all people know, so that's useful to know. Then just F3 and N to switch back to creative mode. So the next one I can't really give a demonstration on, but it's F3 and S, and this quickly just reloads the sound engine and all sounds. I generally don't have to use this much, if at all, but one thing that it is often useful for is if, for example, you plug some headphones in and for some reason the sound is still playing out of your main speakers or something like that, rather than just restarting the game, which usually fixes the problem, you can just press F3 and S to reload the sound engine. It'll take a couple seconds and then it should come out of your headphones or whatever from then on. So now we're on to the 2 last debug shortcuts, and these are probably the more useful ones, especially the last one that I'm going to talk about. So firstly we have F3 and Shift, and this will bring up the debug sort of pie chart thingy, the profiler graph. And this just shows the different amounts of sort of memory and CPU that different things in the game are taking up. So you might not be able to read it, it's a little bit small, but Game Renderer is currently taking up about half of the total. And you can see there's a different sort of number assigned to the different things as well. So Game Renderer is number 1. Now if I actually press 1 on my keyboard, it'll go sort of into that. So you can see at the top it says root.GameRenderer. So right now I'm sort of going into those directories to see what the what is taking up the most CPU or memory within those. So you can see now we have Lebel, GUI, unspecified, and mouse. Now you cannot go into unspecified sort of directories because Minecraft doesn't really sort of know where that's coming from. But we can go into Level. And this is probably the more useful sort of directory that you're going to need. It shows things like entities, terrain setup, terrain, update chunks. And this can help you sort of debug what is making your Minecraft lag. If you have clouds on, for example, clouds are going to take up a good deal of that percentage. So I generally recommend turning that off. And then to go sort of up one level again, all you need to do is press 0. So if we go back into that by pressing 1, you can see these go up to 21, but you cannot sort of enter any directory that is greater than 10. So you can only go to 1 to 9, just because there's no way that you can hold 2 1s down at once, for example. So last but not least, we have the frame time graph, which was implemented by the MogMiner in the 1.8.2 update. So to bring this up, you press F3 and Alt at the same time. Oops. It's just easier to press Alt and F3. And this shows the frame time graph. So I'm recording right now, so it's going to be a bit higher than normal. But this is a good way of sort of visualizing the frames per second a lot better than just the frames per second counter at the top. Because that just generally takes an average of all the frames over a second and then outputs the sort of average of that, whereas this shows the sort of a more sort of accurate representation of that. The sort of easiest way to explain this is you can see there's a 30 line and a 60 line. If everything is below the 60 line, then that means you're getting at least 60 frames per second. If anything is below the 30 line, then that means you're getting above 30 frames per second, things like that. So generally, the higher the line, the worse it is, and the lower line, the better. Or the bars, I should say, not lines. But so my monitor is at 60 hertz. So anything below that 60 line, I will have no sort of visual way of knowing whether it's faster or slower than 60 frames per second. So generally, it's good to keep it below the monitor's sort of refresh rate. As you can see, it also helps you to sort of visualize what is more sort of visually intensive to sort of render on screen. As you can see, it's a lot less intensive to just look at the ground than it is to, for example, look at the sky or move around, things like that. And especially rendering sort of more intensive structures, like things that require more sort of polygons to be made up of. So for example, blocks are quite sort of easy to be made up of, but things like different like model shapes like the end rod and the dragon head, they're made up of more parts, so they're like a little bit more sort of visually intensive to look at. I mean, I know this isn't a great sort of way of showing it, but if you had a sort of world and just looked at dragon heads versus another type of block, you'd be able to see it better. But anyway, that's all for this video. I hope it was at least somewhat useful to some of you. But let me know if it is in the comments below. And I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.